Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Canopy Cast with your hosts Christopher McGurn, John Michael Price, and Michael O'Connor. Canopy Cast is a guest-based podcast that showcases an ecosystem of expertise through thought leadership and innovation. We bring people together to provide value for our audience through impactful stories and experiences. Canopy Cast, an ecosystem of expertise. Today's episode is brought to you by Oxenham Group. The Oxenham Group is a recruiting company that focuses on why a person takes a job and what makes them stay. They do this by understanding one's motivation, skills, and personal mission. Oxenham's proprietary process focuses on three main areas: sociologist-prepared questions, IBM-proven assessments, and Gallup-Clifton strengths. The combined results give the interviewer valuable insight into the potential for close alignment and the likelihood of engagement. For more information, please call 605-610-3026 or visit their website at oxenhamgroup.com.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Canopy Cast. My name is Christopher McGurn with my two co-hosts, John Michael Price and Michael O'Connor. Today we have a very special guest with us. She is a marketing and communications 30-year veteran, full-service agency owner, and a published tech columnist, and a published writer, Wendy Glavin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, the honor is ours for sure. Wendy, what we would love to start out with is just give us a little bit about your background. How did you get into marketing and communications? Like you said, 30-year veteran. Tell us a little bit about how that started.
Okay, so how it started is I had two dreams. One was to be an actress. One was to be an attorney. So I majored in acting. My professor said I was too dramatic. So my parents weren't going to pay, right? So, for a struggling actress. So I figured just simply like this, what was I, 19 years old, 20? I was like, okay, I guess maybe they need dramatic people in communications. So I switched to communications. So I graduated communications. The next dream I had to be a lawyer came from my father, who was a prosecutor, my hero. He died young. I took the LSATs and I barely got into not a great law school. So he said to me, Wendy, you will never be a good lawyer until you learn to see the other side. So he said, you're more of an advocate. So it's taken me probably till now. I turned 62 last week. Now I can see the other side. But I don't know that I have any plans to go to law school, but who knows?
Hey, who knows, right?
So anyway, I ended up, because my parents were like, you're out the door, tough love, out. So first job, take it, and you can't live here. So I got a job at General Electric working in-house. Okay. And I was surrounded by, developers, data scientists, all technology people. And I learned a lot, which helped, give me experience in technology. And then I really wanted to be surrounded by my communications peers. So I joined a full service advertising and PR agency. I got married to my husband at the time. We went on our honeymoon. He was working at Goldman Sachs. He'll hate me for saying this, but he got quote unquote laid off, but we got back. So we moved to New York, and my boss at Elkman recommended me to Burson Marsteller. So then I worked there. But what I wanted to say is the path is that having worked at GE, then I started to get technology accounts. So at Elkman, I had a division of DuPont, amongst others. At Burson, I managed a division of IBM. And so I kind of kept being tracked as sort of like a tech communications person, although I've worked across a lot of different industries. So that's kind of how it happened.
Gotcha.
That's the path. But do you want to know why I founded my agency, or how, or?
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, again, like we mentioned before, this is very conversational, so we would love just to hear.
Speaking for 40 minutes.
No, sure. And the other guys here will definitely chime in with their questions as well.
Because I'm definitely like a healthy talker.
Oh yeah, no, you're good. You're good. No, but I find it fascinating. I mean, that's a lot of experience that you have, just listening.
That was like a long time ago. So then I had three boys. Today they're 28, 26, and 21. During that time, I resigned from Burson and ended up having my first son. So over the years, we had this wonderful experience of living in the south of France for the month of July for 10 summers. And I used to come back from France after that month, and friends would say, I'll just give you an example, like where'd you get those bracelets? Can you see, like, where did you get, could we buy them from you? So at that time, which is a long time ago, what they call in France fantasy jewelry, it didn't exist here. So I founded a jewelry business importing jewelry from France to the US. So that was a really good experience. I did shows at Vogue, Vanity Fair, Glamour, investment banks, like Christmas shows, all that kind of stuff. So then sort of the funny story is when we were starting to be talking about getting a divorce in New York City, my ex he's been a bond salesman on Wall Street for 30 some years. So that's like a David and Goliath. Like, how do you get divorced from like a finance person? So the attorney, the firm I hired, because people said you have to hire an attorney that really knows finance. So you're ready. So for them to even begin working for you, you have to give them $30,000. So all my friends got together and said, hey, let's throw Wendy a get a divorce party, and had all these jewelry shows for me. And then I went and I got paid in cash, right? Because I didn't want him to know. And then went into, I won't name the law firm, but gave them, like, in the conference room, $10, $20, $30, like all the way up to $30,000. So I did the jewelry business. Then after that, I worked on Channel 13. I worked on a TV show. Then I worked for a publisher, helping authors, existing authors or new authors, to promote their books with websites, social media, dedicated book websites, etc. Then I resigned. I became a full-time consultant. I worked for agencies, not worldwide, but like in Montreal, in Chicago. And what led to me founding my agency in 2016 was I worked for an agency in Chicago, and I had 3 clients. And one of them was a fintech startup, financial technology. And he said to me, Twitter really costs a lot, because I was like building up his whole, their whole brand. So I said, a lot, and let's just make it an easy number. I said, it's only $50 an hour, something like that. And he says, I'm being charged $150. So I never knew that. I didn't know what I was being billed out as. But then, so I said, oh my God. And then he ended up firing the agency head, and then two other clients did the same. So I decided to found my agency with the mission of charging the value of the service. So, I don't double and triple bill. It's like, I'm very honest about, what I bill. I don't have packages. It's like I work with individuals on a one-to-one basis, based on the size of their company, to, make sure that it's, works for both of us. So that was the premise on which I started my agency. So certainly when I say I charge the value of the service, then that I'm not making like millions. But to me, that's like just, it comes from my dad. It's like ethical, and that's my value system. I also tell people the truth. So either people like that, because I don't believe that people hire people for what they do. I believe that people hire people for who they are. And so I'm really honest. So when someone says, for example, I want PR. So, and I say very commonly with tech startups, well, look, you've got a lot of buzzwords, accolades, company jargon. You're not going to get picked up, right? Editors are not going to cover this until you fix your website content. So one guy said to me, after I said that, he goes, I don't need a writing lesson from you. I said, a writing lesson? I said, I'm trying to tell you how you should get PR. So he said, okay, well, send me a proposal. And I said, what do you do? He said he works on Wall Street. So I figured, well, that's typical, like thinking my ex-husband. So I never followed up, because the thing is, it's like, if I don't feel from the very beginning that we're going to have a good collaboration, because work should be like enjoyable and fun, not like, oh my God, it's so stressful, or like, you have a pit in your stomach when a client calls. So that's kind of my agency model.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's very true. It's it's all about the relationship. It's all about who who you trust, who you like, right? In a previous episode, we actually talked about that, and it's so true. But yeah, like, who wants to do business when it's just about the transaction, right? It's about the person, it's about the relationship, and I think you're hitting on something there. I'm also just amazed at how diverse everything is. I mean, we're talking like, you're, knowing people on Wall Street in New York City, to living in the south of France with fantasy jewelry. I mean, like, it's fascinating. Like, I don't know, guys, do you have any questions about that? Like, to me, it's just my mind is like running, like, how does this all connect? What a journey. I mean, it's amazing to listen.
Last comment. So I would say what my parents did well was tough love. Okay. Like get out, and then that makes you more scrappy, right? If you got to find a job, you have to live on your own, you have to really learn how to, you have to keep moving forward. Unfortunately, I haven't used that same strategy with my 3 boys. So two of them are living here. One finished his junior year online, obviously. Another one is also working from home, but I didn't follow. I would never kick anybody out. I would never. It's not something I would ever do. So now, it'll take like a week, and I'll be like, "Can't you do the dishes? Can't you empty the dishwasher?" And it's sort of like, eventually they won't, because it's like, well, my mom's going to do it anyway. That's what they're used to. So I created that.
Really quick, where are you at these days?
I live in Manhattan in New York City.
Okay, gotcha.
Where am I living now? In my bedroom. I'm on the 31st floor of like a really wonderful building with balconies and all that kind of thing. But, the apartment can't really handle like 3 grown people. So this is my office and bedroom and TV and everything. And then the next room, one of my boys sleep, and the other one sleeps on the sofa in the living room.
Okay. So, sorry, John, go ahead. I know you had a question there.
No, yeah. I was just going to ask you obviously have a lot of different interests. And, one of the kind of trends that I see with people like that, I'm one of those people. I have a lot of, spread out interests, is being able to get bored easily with a topic and wanting to, always have that excitement of learning something new, doing something new. What's some advice you have for people with, sticking with some of the things that you stuck with? Like, how do you kind of manage that, mentally and on your own, to kind of, stick things out when they do get a little boring, or to, refresh something that is getting a little dull?
That's a great question. I would say, first and foremost, I tell a lot of like startups this, follow people that are ahead of you on social media so that you can learn. So a long time ago, I followed all the top people in PR and top people in marketing, social media, blah, blah, blah. So then to your point, John, so then it's sort of, I'm not saying I know everything, but like I've got it down, especially after all these years. So then I sort of switched into technology, and then like read every single thing I could about blockchain or fintech, financial technology, artificial intelligence. So to your point about like, what do you do when you get bored, which is, I think a different way to look at it is like, how do you move forward in your career? So I would say to just keep building on your strengths. And I tell people that no matter what age, when you look back at your whole life, so it's a combination of your background, your experiences, your relationships, your interests, your hobbies. So instead of looking forward to find your passion, look back, because that's where you'll find your passion. So, I don't think I'll go to acting school now, but, it was weird, but I had written my entire life, but I never owned the fact that I was a writer. And once I owned that fact, then, I became a published writer and a technology columnist for Equities. So I think so that's one. 2, it's beyond just business things. It's also just looking back at the fact that the article that was published yesterday in Equities, which is called The Unexpected Perks of Working Remotely, I took a shot of a rainbow the other day, last week, and it just came out really well. And I didn't think he would use that as the image, but he did. And it reminded me of photography being a hobby of mine. I was like, that's a pretty good picture. And I totally forgot. So, I'll get my camera out and start, getting back involved with that. Or we sang karaoke. It was my birthday last week.
Oh, happy belated birthday.
Thank you. So I realized, wait a second, I used to play the piano. Like, why don't we get a keyboard? So, it's stuff like that. I think also during these times, I've thought about the fact that, being sensitive to, people and everything that's going on around us. So I would say I've changed my focus. And something I wrote about yesterday is that I believe that and I can tell from every conversation I have, our personal and professional personas have merged together. So we used to talk about the need, like we need to be authentic, we need to be vulnerable, we need to be purpose driven. But the thing is now we have to, like we have no choice. I have never had a call since the global pandemic where people haven't said like, how are you, how you doing? You know, so I think it's much more people first. And I hope that always stays, because I think it's really important. I think people are realizing that. And so it's, as Brian Schulman says, it's like heart first instead of business first.
Yes. Yes. And huge shout out to Brian Schulman. That's actually a mutual connection that we have here with Wendy.
Yes.
So, you know, it's funny how the community through the podcast, you know, Brian, we had earlier on in one of the early episodes, one of the first episodes we had. And, you know, it's funny to see that come up again here. So that's, you know, shout out to Brian Schulman, and we're really grateful to have you on here, Wendy, through that.
Thank you. John, I wanted to mention something else. Here's another good example when you're speaking about Brian. So I met him, I don't know, a year ago or two, whatever, at this global LinkedIn live event. And I also cover events. So I was, at the time I had a cane. I was in a taxi that crashed with a Mack truck, by the way, after I founded my agency in August 2016, November, in the taxi truck crash. So I had a full leg brace and a cane. I'm in a personal injury case. A friend of mine, Andy Wang, who's he's also a podcaster. He's actually a partner at Runnymede Capital Management, but so he helped me, you know, carried my computer, he picked me up, and it was in New Jersey. Anyway, so I briefly met Brian, and I covered the first panel, which ended up being a really good one. And so Brian and I just kept in touch. And then recently I was speaking to him several months ago, and he was saying, you know, you need to go live, like you're behind the scenes. Now, not live like this where I'm talking to like you guys. It's more like, you know, holding up your phone or your computer and speaking. So I kept saying to him, I don't want to do that. Like I'm working in my bedroom, like, you know, my hair's not today, my hair's fine, but I'm saying like my hair's a mess, like a frat house. And he goes, so what, Wendy? And then after singing with the baseball cap, he goes, Wendy, everyone's living the same. Like it doesn't matter. So he persuaded me and taught me to like so now I've done 2 live videos. And the first one I put on backwards baseball cap, and I just said, welcome to Glavin's frat house. So I'd like to say that John, he really helped me, because it is a different skill set to, you know, go live, not talking to people, right? But, you know, go live just like staring at a camera.
And you know that kind of actually prompts a question of, you know, with your acting background, right? Like that, you know, that experience there, what was that like? Did it feel like you were on stage again? Did you feel like you were breaking the fourth wall? Was it kind of like a soliloquy? What was going on?
I think that the problem is, thanks about the acting thing. I hitchhiked to acting school for 13 years. My parents refused to drive me because they were like, no way are we supporting her like with this. So, but the difference with acting is that you have people in front of you. You have an audience. You know, a good example that I saw and think about is the fact that like Simon Sinek, you know, or Brian or me, you know, plenty of people who have, you know, speak publicly, you know, at live events, that kind of thing. We need to learn these different skills. So John, again, back to your point. So this is something I'm trying to learn to be better at. Not these two-way conversations, just, you know, holding up a camera and saying something that's of value to somebody. So I think it's a different skill set, because you could tell I'm outgoing, I'm chatty, all that kind of stuff, but, you know, just with myself. And also I think that a lot of marketing and PR people, we've been trained to advocate for our clients, not for ourselves. So it's so many years that people have been like, you need to do a video, and I'm busy telling everybody they need to do videos, but like, did I do one? No. That's why I'll give a shout out to Brian Schulman, who, you know, he really persuaded me and convinced me the fact that, you know, this isn't advocating yourself, you're shining the light on other people or shining the light on a subject, or, you know, that sort of thing. So John, even at my old age of 62,
Young age.
Oh, I didn't call anybody old. Don't put that on.
I'm always trying to learn new things. You know what else, John and Christopher and Michael? I think it's also great that, because somebody said, why do you say you're a 30-year veteran? People are going to know you're old. So I said, no, it's a competitive advantage.
That's right. Straight up.
I'm allowed to say now, you know what? I know pretty much about most things. I know a little about everything.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you in the thought camp that it's better to know a lot about one thing or a little about many things?
A little about many things. I mean, a little, that's, it's relative. Like, you know what I mean? A little, but because that makes it easier for you to, find transferable skills, common patterns throughout your background. And I'm not going to use the ridiculous words of like pivot and the new normal and all that kind of stuff, all those cliches. But instead, like, we can find, different ways to work. So for example, live. So that's like something new for me. Also this, the article I wrote yesterday, which I actually didn't know if Equities would publish it because it's much more, it's not really tech talk, but they did publish it and said, we actually agree that, now's not the time to be doing like landscape, tech pieces. So, I had to learn, because being a published writer is different than just, writing for your clients. So I would say I have a fantastic, awesome, amazing business advisor, mentor, coach. Her name is Deidre Breckenridge, which I'll give a shout out to. And, she has really helped move me along in terms of, why don't you own the fact that you're a writer? Like, you are a writer. So like, you can get paid to write. It's like, so you can sometimes just do things naturally and don't think of them as like, oh, this is really a skill set that perhaps I could be paid for, perhaps people need. Or a new thing I'm doing is I'm going to provide 1 hour coaching, 1 hour, $100. And I will tell absolutely anyone what they need to do to be successful in 1 hour. So that's something that I didn't start it yet, but it's going to be called Decoding Your Value. So it's not this people can continue, but I'm saying in 1 hour, I can tell people what's working and what isn't.
Honestly, you answered the question that I kind of wanted to ask about, the being able to be a little bit of knowledge across wide variety of things and ideas, that kind of cross-pollination of ideas, of creativity, I think is what, sparks innovation across whole industries. But now, in this kind of post-corona world that we're living in, it's been fascinating to see. I think it's been more evident, what individuals and entire companies are kind of taking which approach. The companies that have been so laser focused on one thing that they don't even think about everything else for so long, and now they're kind of in this situation, versus the companies that, like you said, who have these kind of experiences in these expertises, in these individuals who enjoy that curiosity, just learning. I think it's been amazing to kind of see that become more crystal clear how necessary it is. I completely agree with you. Like the experiences that you've had across different things, I'm sure affect the way you write, the way you interact with clients, the way you are as a professional. So honestly, you answered my question even before I asked it.
I'll tell you something really funny, but going back to Deidre Breckenridge, this goes back to your question, John, too. She's like, says you're a hashtag forever student. And so I was writing an article and I said, can I like say that you coined that phrase? She said, no, I didn't coin that phrase. That's what I'm saying that you are. You're a forever student. So, but I want to give you another example. So I wanted to support a friend of mine she's has her own agency, Jennifer Witter. She did a networking event, and this was, obviously not virtual. So what she asked people to do, which I think was really clever, was, okay, I don't want anyone to talk about their backgrounds, where they're from, where they live, etc. So we're going to make believe that get into groups of 3. One of you are a penguin farmer. The 2 others are journalists. So I said, okay, I'll be a journalist, right? So I continued to fire questions at the girl who was a penguin farmer. I'm like, well, have you named the penguins? Like, how are you going to, transport them? Where are they going? Like, what are you going to feed them? Like, on and on and on. So later they said to me, how'd you know all these things about penguins? I said, because my oldest son worked in the Central Park Zoo and he worked in the penguin department.
That's amazing.
And if you want to know what you need to feed pigs or hogs or whatever you call it, it's whoopie pies. So whoopie pies are like, like a cookie, whipped cream, then vegetables, then whipped like a lasagna. You know what I mean? And then they like gobble them up. You can kind of, but it's like what you said, Michael. I think it has to do with how your mind works. Like I'm much more of an abstract thinker. People that are more linear perhaps find that a little bit tougher. So I think that it depends on what type of the way in which you think. Another thing I want to recommend is there's a great book. It's called Mindset. I don't have but it's Mindset, and Carol Dweck is the author, and she talks about fixed and what's the other mindset? Fixed and I don't know, let's say positive. So for example, so she gives an example of students who get, students in school and they get like a C on a math test. So they say, okay, I suck at math. And then so those have a fixed mindset. It's growth. So the ones who have a growth mindset, they think, you know what? I still have the rest of the semester to pick up my grade. I need to meet with the professor. So the fact that, anyone can have you can adopt a growth mindset. So I think that's an excellent book that really, I read and I loved, and, it really teaches you how to adopt that growth mindset. And she gives so many examples, from like entertainers to like a Michael Jordan, to sports, to, a whole bunch of different industry sectors.
That's intriguing. Yeah, it actually kind of leads me to my next question for you, Wendy. The three of us here love to read. So I'd love to learn more about, the writing background specifically. What are the greatest things that you've learned over the years, like for writing specifically? And just kind of where did that inspiration start with the writing?
I think it really, I've written my entire life, but I told you I didn't own it.
Right.
So Deed was saying to me, Wendy, you are a you've already been I was a published writer because I was covering events, which obviously means you're a published, and they were there. It was my own take. I didn't tape these events. I wrote my own, my take on it. So she started to saying to me this point, like, you're not owning that you're a writer, like you're absolutely a writer. So, it's taken time. I would say like I've improved significantly. So previously I used to feel that, well, I need to back up what I say with like stats and facts and all that kind of stuff. And so that you wouldn't really see my own opinion, like my personal opinion. And the thing I wanted to say is anything that you write, it has to be current. And here are the rules. It has to be newsworthy, educational, thought-provoking, or inspiring. So the most difficult thing is coming up with original angles, because if we're trying to fit into those categories, what could anyone possibly write that's like new about, I'm sorry, but I don't really want to talk about this, the global pandemic, COVID, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's the biggest challenge, coming up with an original angle based on one of those things. So I think now I've been bringing my, let's say, not public self, personal self more into my articles, but I think that takes time, right? You have to build credibility. And I used to tell people like long ago, like, well, if you don't believe me, like you'll believe Harvard Business Review. You know what I mean? So I've never really thought that much about SEO, but when you put links in here's another good example. I had a client who felt that they were a competitor of Uber. So I went to a global travel event and Uber was there. So I rose my hand and I already knew the answer coming from a legal background, growing up with lawyers. And I said, wait, I have a question. And this is how I ask it. And I already know the answer. I said, I'm just curious, you adding a 911 app to your button to Uber, doesn't that mean that your passengers aren't safe? And then the rest of the people in the room were like, yeah, I agree with that girl in the back of the room. So then from that, I wrote the article called Is Uber's 911 App an Admission of Guilt? And I did a question mark, and the client said, don't put a question mark, just make a statement. I said, no, because there's always going to be people who use Uber. So I'm going to let them decide. But the way in which it's written, it would be clear that like passengers are at risk. And so then you were asking about books. So right now, I'm reading this book. I'll hold it up. I'll read it to you. It's Joe Vitale, The Art and Science of Results. And I'm reading this book because my plan is to write a book. And I have, I've been through a lot of traumatic experiences, quite traumatic, but, I don't want to write a book about that. So something that's good about his book is he was homeless and he ended up becoming, really wealthy, but sort of combining my, personal stories and what are business lessons I've learned. This is another book with the best headline I think I've ever heard. Goodbye Anxiety, Hello Freedom. I would say the other books I'd recommend to people, I'm looking on my bookshelf, is Adam Grant's Originals, How Nonconformists Changed the World. I would say that's probably one of the best books I've ever read, ever. That book is fantastic. Adam Grant Originals, How Nonconformists, Changed the World. Simon Sinek's Start With Why. You know that book, right? I've got a ton of books here like Blockchain Revolution, Life After Google. So I tend to read nonfiction. I don't read fiction.
And how many books would you say you read per year? Like, do you have I know a lot of people have goals of oh, I want to read, 52 books a year, once a week, or do you have any goals like that?
No. Not to be so dramatic. No.
No. That's fine.
It's just fine. That I would say, let's just say on average in a year, I probably read, I'm just trying to think, would it be a book a month? Something like that. Let's say a book a month. Like
10 to 15 books a year kind of thing?
Probably.
Yeah.
And then sometimes more, like I was heavily involved in blockchain for a while. So I read, as I said, Blockchain Revolution and in the Age of Cryptocurrency. So, I read, in other words, I will read a lot when I'm working with a specific client in an industry sector because I want to know every single thing about that industry sector, because that goes back to your point, John. So if you're working for a client, you need to be the voice of the client. So then I need to read a lot because it's not like I just knew blockchain or, I had to really learn. And one of the first, not a first job, but a guy said to me, not a guy, sorry, his name is Todd Fabisher. He's a 25-year software expert. And he said to me, he and I were working together on some projects, and he said, I'd like to hire you to market mobile apps. This is like years ago. I said, forget it. Hire some young person. Like, I'm not the right person. I know nothing about mobile apps, nothing. So he said to me, look, I want you to think about it over the weekend and then talk to me because I really think you're right for this job. So I went to the bookstore and I bought everything you ever wanted to know about mobile apps. So it's kind of like when you're in college, like I highlighted things in yellow and I folded them over, and then I asked him and we spoke about it. And then we actually rang the opening bell at NASDAQ at the end of this whole thing because we helped promote a software company's coding app called Live Code. And the hashtag was everyone can code, everyone can learn to code. So I think it's like, I think it is, so it's important to, be honest with people. And then if people feel like for whatever reason they still want to work with you, then I would really say, at least based on my experience, is that not only reading books, but like reading articles, like tons and tons and tons of articles, not just sharing on Twitter, like actually reading articles. And I make sure that anything I share, post or whatever is like current today. Sometimes I'll see Twitter and it's like some article from 2018 or 19. And it's like, to me, that's not pertinent to people right now. So those are just, I think, some sort of general easy tips.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I know we only have a couple minutes left before we have to wrap up here. So, guys, now is a chance for any last questions, any final questions we have for Wendy. Wendy, if you have any questions for us, like now is the time to kind of go into that.
Yeah. So so Canopy Cast, how long have you been in existence?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a little weird because we'll probably be releasing this episode a couple weeks into the future, so we will have been. Yeah, we've been recording for, gosh, almost a month now, and we're at where we are right now when we're recording this. We have 6 episodes out,
Wow.
or
7 today. Yeah.
7 today, but then in the future it'll be more. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. It's super fun.
Thank you. It's so fun.
Where are you guys located?
Yeah, so I'm in Eastern Ohio. I'm about 30 minutes west of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania right now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am in that same location, and then John over there is in Denver.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Philadelphia, so not. I've been to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, grew up with that, so it's a good area for sure. Good area for sure.
Can I ask,
I know.
How are you managing during these times?
I'd say pretty well. It has its challenges for sure, but I think overall, I know I speak for myself here. Like, I'm so grateful I have these two guys. We're also business partners. We own, a couple businesses as well outside of the podcast. So I know, like, the three of us work together all the time, and I'm really grateful I have them. I know that if I didn't have these two guys, I don't know where I would be. And I'm sure I could speak the same for them as well. We rely on each other a lot. So
yeah, I agree with you. It's really important to rely, rely on our colleagues and friends and that kind of stuff to keep us going.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of going off what you were saying, Chris, of like the community aspect, like just having the two guys, the two co-hosts here that I'm with is incredible. And then seeing the community aspect of podcasting in general,
since
we've gotten involved,
like Brian,
and then getting in touch with you, and then all of these connections.
Yeah.
And there's a very intimate kind of community in podcasting, but also just in the professional realm. I think since things have gotten harder for a lot of people, things have gotten, you can't go outside and get community as easily in person. So there's almost this natural kind of progression of really, really amazing community. And whether it's LinkedIn or podcasting, it's been really incredible to, like you mentioned, going LinkedIn Live. You're just being yourself. You're just saying things to your phone, and it's broadcasted. And there's an incredible rawness there that I think has so much value. It's just so fantastic.
I'll tell you one more funny thing. So I was doing a webcast with these 3 guys, 2 finance guys, 1 blockchain guy. And I knew 2 of them, Jason Yanowitz, he's the co-founder of Blockworks Group, and Raymond Kahn. But Andrew Korn, I didn't know. So Compro.biz hosted this webcast, and I was the host. So anyway, so I reached out to Andy, and I was in the kitchen with my nightgown on, like making dinner, and he called on FaceTime. I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm in a nightgown. Like, why are you calling on FaceTime? So he said, well, you called me on FaceTime. I said, no, I didn't call you on FaceTime. I said, listen, he goes, okay, we'll just set up a Zoom meeting. So what's so funny is I do what I did today, like put on makeup, get ready, wear a dress, right? And then we get on a Zoom call, and I'm like, hey, Andy, how you doing? He goes, fine. He goes, why don't we just have a regular call? I said, have a regular call. I said, because of you, I had to like get dressed up and put on makeup and that kind of thing. And now you're saying have a regular call?
That's awesome. Wow.
all of the social cues, it's so funny.
Yeah.
With all the video conferencing and stuff to, when you pop in one and the other person's wearing a t-shirt and you're like, oh, I'm overdressed or anything like that.
I don't think there's ever been a time where more people have paired pajama pants and collared shirts together.
Yes, that's true too.
I'm loving it.
I don't know if you've ever seen the Holderness family videos.
I don't know if
because Brian started this. They are the most. They have like 1 million. They're obviously a professional family, but they do videos like on a daily basis of what it's like in quarantine. And one was what you just said, where the guy's doing like a formal presentation, and then he gets up and he doesn't have any pants on. I mean, they blurred it out, but Fitness videos are fantastic. Like everything we're all like, it's almost like a Seinfeld in the sense of like, for women, for people like getting your hair cut or colored, like what a nightmare that is. It is so hilarious. So I recommend watching their videos. That'll give you, I think the most important thing is we need to laugh.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. I have one last quick question. Do you know what you want to title your book when you write it?
Oh.
So again, the problem was my honesty. So what I wanted to title, because this is a great title, Disowned, because I was disowned from my mother, and a lot of things ensued from that. But then that would have to be the entire story of all of that and what ensued. So that was my first idea. This is really funny. My middle son said to me, "Why don't you write from homemaker to blockchain?" I'm like, homemaker to blockchain? Like, what the hell? Why would I write that? So he says, well, it's very clickbaity. Like people would read. I said, yeah, there's people who read. I'm not writing from homemaker to blockchain. So yeah, I need to. It's funny. It's not funny, but it's interesting that you asked because sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep at night, I start, which is not good because then you can't sleep. Is I kept trying to think of ideas. I wrote an article that had to do a lot with Brian's show, and I called Live. It's Voice Your Vibe.
Yeah.
When I told him that, and I said it was like 2 Saturdays ago or something. I said I told him because I wanted to make sure everything I wrote was correct, and I said, you know what? I was laying in bed. It was Saturday night, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like, should I get up and watch Saturday Night Live? And then I'm like, I thought of that. And he said, that's so funny, Wendy, because that's exactly how I came up with Voice Your Vibe. Live, it's Voice Your Vibe. Live, it's Saturday Night Live. And the last thing, my kids went to school with Lauren Michaels' son. Lauren Michaels?
Oh, okay.
Wow, yeah.
Oh, wait, one last thing. I promise. Fast. So guess who I went to school? I'm not going to tell you because we don't have enough time, but I went to lower school in Center City, Philadelphia. Okay. And Kevin Bacon was in my class.
Wow.
And we played Spin the Bottle, like a whole group of us, because he was in my class. So we spin the bottle and get into a closet. And you know what he says to me? I'm sorry, I don't want to kiss you. So, and, years later, when I worked for Elkman, I represented his father and drove him to a radio interview. And I tell him about Kevin. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure he didn't mean it. But this is so funny to people because they're always like, oh, well, maybe he was gay or, but it's funny. Like I can't even watch Kevin Bacon anymore.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wow. Man. What a way to end it right there. Go out with the boom. No, that's awesome though. Thanks for sharing that. And Wendy, thank you so much for joining us today. We really loved having you. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure these other guys did. And I know our listeners and viewers have a lot to look forward to with this episode. So Wendy Glavin, everyone, make sure to check her out. We're going to be dropping all the links. Check out her LinkedIn and all the other profiles we'll be providing. Really has a lot to offer. Really fantastic person and has a lot of good things going on. So Wendy, thank you so much. And for all of you listeners and viewers out there, we'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate meeting you all and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.